Hello, hello. Good morning. Oh, did I forget to tweet? Let me tweet. I was interrupted by I was interrupted. And we are reviewing the events-based environment effects, environment effects, and moving on with our app. I was interrupted just before the stream, so I forgot to do the tweet. Anyways, so what I thought I'd do, let me just give it a second. If someone, let's give it a minute to see if someone joins. Let's see, has anything happened? Yeah, I saw this Max Stoiber. He's a character in a good, like, I mean that in a very good way. I do wonder though, I don't like, Max is such a down-to-earth person, but I do wonder, like, $1 billion business, like running a business isn't a recipe for success. Like, how do you define success? You can define that as success, building $1 billion business, and you do impact a lot of people's lives, right? Especially if you are able to. That's the thing. I hate this title. I really like Max, but I hate this title. And the reason I hate this title is because the success factor is having $1 billion business. The success factor is not if you have $1 billion business, you can have a shitty culture and people hate working there, but you still have $1 billion business. You might do immoral things, like you have clothing companies, $1 billion businesses, child labor, right? Kids making the clothes. You have like the medical industry, $1 billion business, but you have to pay a ton of money for medicines that doesn't need to cost that much. So that's why I hate this title. It's not focused on creating an environment for people to have an impact and feel a purpose and build a culture. It's about the money. Yeah, I don't like that. I don't know. I just had to have something to talk about. Okay. Let me just start. Cool. So I refactored the Excalibur Firebase application, and I thought I would kind of give a quick review before we jump into the other application. So we have 3 features here. We have 3 environment effects, and we have authentication as an environment effect. And the only thing this does now is that it has 3 events it will emit. It's either authenticated, unauthenticated, or if you actually do a sign-in, that might lead to an error, like doing the actual sign-in. Or typically a sign-in ends up in you getting an authenticated event. And the only thing this has to do is to have these events and then a sign-in method. The cool thing is that when this is implemented for the test environment, the only thing we do is to add events, and then we use just mocked functions for all the methods. In terms of browser implementation, you can see that if you ignore this part, which is just updating the user, you see I create authentication by creating the auth events, and I'm creating it in the closure here because I'm creating a subscription to Firebase that's running all the time. And whenever Firebase says, okay, now we have a user, we'll emit that authenticated event. If we don't have a user, we're suddenly unauthenticated. And when we do the sign-in, we do the sign-in. And in this case, we don't have to emit the authenticated event because that happens up here. So if we have a successful sign-in, this will change and emit the event, or this will trigger and emit the event. But you might get an error there, so we have a sign-in error. Now, the similar thing is like copy image to clipboard is an environment effect that doesn't use events because it's like a synchronous thing. And then the storage has a bit more events related to fetching an Excalibur draw, saving it, creating it, fetching the previews, getting image sources and stuff like that. But everything is just a method returning void, and we have our events here. And the same thing here, we just create the events and we use just mocking functions for the tests. In the browser, it's of course a lot more implementation because we're using Firebase to grab all the data. But at the end of the day, we're just emitting these events. So for the auth, we can look at a test. Oh, what happened here? Ah, shit, did this happen again? Ah, I really hate this. It seems sometimes when I publish React states, it's not able to, for some reason, it's not including, you see that? It doesn't include the files for some reason, and I don't understand why this happens. I think I'm publishing it too fast. Like, why do I only have this issue? I wonder. Because I do a yarn build and then like instantly I do a publish. But it seems like I have to wait for some reason. I don't understand this. So now we have... Oh, it's not creating the test folder. Where the hell did the test folder go? Ooh. What the fuck happened here? Oh, did I delete it? Oh, I think I delete. Like it's the test folder is. What the hell happened there? Let's go back a few commits and go grab it again. What the fudge? Where is the test folder? Seriously? Why does it have a DevTools folder here? What the fuck? What the hell has happened here? Source. Where's my test? Oh, wait, what the fudge? Oh, I think I know what happened. Shit. So it was never, you see here? I git ignore the test folder. But it shouldn't ignore the test folder inside the source folder. Oh, fuck. So I deleted it. Fuck. Is there some way I can go grab the code? Yeah, let me see. Okay, so we're going to do something crazy here. Let's see. Yeah, this was my bad. So we'll install the latest instead. What the hell? Yarn add react. Oh, are we going to spend the stream doing this shit? Oh, god damn it. I hate this. So now we should have... Oh, come on. We should have React states. There we go. There we have the test folder. So this is the thing. So if we go back to React, oh, good thing I found the code. Like, there's supposed to be a test folder here with index.tsx, and yeah, so this is missing the don't I have that as a dependency? React testing library. Oh, I think I have to explicitly install it, right? Anyways, render reducer hook callback. So this should return. I can't remember typing here. This would be states any, I believe, and the render callback would be, well, it gets a component here. Use states, and this would be a React function component, and then React node. Okay, we'll have to test this, but let's see. Oh, god damn it. Does it add this to the dependencies now? Oh, god damn it. It shouldn't do that. Let's see. Okay, states reducer should be okay, so we can do t extends can do that, and then why doesn't that work? Type and define argument of type React node is not assignable to parameter React element. Oh yeah. Okay, we'll just say return type of Why doesn't this work? Oh no, sorry, not return type. It's the argument. What's it called? Parameters. There we go. So the first parameter of render. That's what we're doing here. Cool. So we got the typing back there. And then we have to make this part of the actual commit. So we have to fix our git ignore. Wow, this is and DevTools, like the actual DevTools folder here, that shouldn't be there either. So this is interesting. Let's delete DevTools and let's just fix the git ignore of the, where's git ignore? There you are. So we shouldn't like test. So DevTools and test. But not source. And like, can I just do this maybe? So now it ignores this test folder, which is good. It should do that. But it does not ignore this stuff. That's good. Okay, I think we have the right setup now. So let's git add this, git commit. Oh wait, we have to do, god damn it. First we, for fuck's sake. Why didn't it include the DevTools now? Ah, for frick's sake. Fix test folder and git ignore. Because now I think it still has the DevTools folder here. No, it doesn't. Okay, good. Okay, and now we have the test there. Okay, so if we build it now, it should like build it. And we have DevTools, which is ignored. We have test there, which is ignored. Good. DevTools, test, great. And then we have the similar thing there. And one thing we have to fix though is that I don't want typing to occur on these things, which it does now. So you have a tendency to import. I'm not sure how to fix that, because sometimes you get like IntelliSense and it says you suddenly import from CommonJS instead of the main thing. So you want to import from CommonJS when you're writing tests, but you don't want to do that Maybe I can, like, test shouldn't be, oh, this is interesting. So you shouldn't, oh, this is quite interesting. So you shouldn't be able to import, like, test should always be required. Well, who knows? Maybe somebody runs Node in ES module version. Okay, so I'm not sure how to fix that specifically. Like, because the auto suggestions gives you CommonJS and normal imports. And sometimes you should use CommonJS, which is like when you write tests and you happen to run Node in CommonJS mode. But you also get suggestions on CommonJS in your normal app where you shouldn't be using CommonJS. And that can give unpredictable behavior, especially with the dev tools. Like you use DevTools, like use DevTool, the hook. If you import that from CommonJS, but the manager is imported from ESM, then it won't work because it's different contexts. It's just, I fucking hate the JSON ecosystem around packages, and it's so difficult to create a good developer experience. Anyways, let's just get this thing running. npm publish tag next. Oh, and we were supposed to review the thing I was so happy about, and then we run into this shit. That's the nature. That's how it's like to be a JavaScript developer working in the JavaScript ecosystem. That's what you have to deal with. Oh, did I use... Oh, for frick's sake. I refactored this. It should be render hook. Hook, callback. Yes, the transitions. Yeah, reducer component. Or this should be hook. Hook component. Sorry, I obsess about, oh, we don't need this. I obsess about naming things. This would be use states, hook callback, render callback, states reducer, hook component, update transitions reducer. Updated reducer. Well, we can call it states reducer. Updated states reducer. Okay, cool. I'm happy with this. And I'm just shoving versions on this. I don't care. It's the next version anyways. Nobody's using it. accept us. I did introduce the event stuff and had a session yesterday with colleagues on the new stuff we're building at Code Sandbox, and it fits really well with what we're building. And we saw like new opportunities for simplification and so on, and I'll show you some of those simplifications now. It's not that it's easier, it's just it's simpler, which is a good thing. Like simple and easy are different things. Okay, so let's add. Now we should be good. There we are. Cool. So anyways, sorry about that. Should go to did I change this? I can't remember. Oh yeah, we're calling it signed. Okay, we're calling it authenticated. Anyways, so the way we write the test is like should go to authenticated when mounted and is logged in. So we are setting up our test here using the authentication, which gives us a component that consumes the authentication feature and gives us the context. So we can check the authentication feature, what state it's in. And then we have authentication, and this is coming from, this is an environment effect. I haven't really figured out how to name these things. Typically your authentication is part of the API maybe, like you have an API environment effect. But in this case, it's its own effect. But no matter, what we're able to do now is, okay, we render out the app, and then we can just start firing off events. This is how you don't have to like call a method and like mock the result and do that kind of stuff. You can just fire events from the environment effect, because that's what's going into the reducer and moving the application forward. So in this case, we're just emitting, okay, you are authenticated, and then we expect the context to move into an authenticated authenticated state. I just like to type these. Yes, and the same for unauthenticated. We just fire off an unauthenticated event. And in this case, we are going to, when we sign in, so we start in the unauthenticated state, and then we dispatch a sign in, like this is coming from the UI. And then we expect the context to go into signing in mode. Yeah, this should to equal, I'm just adjusting to the best practices here. Oops. It should move to signing in, and then we can just check. Yeah, so we can just check if it's been called. And we could check if it was called with certain arguments, because all of these things are just functions, as I like mocking functions. And then if it's been called, we can check or we can trigger that we are authenticated, and then we should move to authenticated again, which is pretty cool. Like the tests are super straightforward now. And in terms of the actual implementation, we can see that, okay, we have our initial checking authentication, unauthenticated, signing in, authenticated, and error. And then we use this concept of a public auth event, because we separate what events should you be able to trigger from the UI, right? There are only certain events you should be able to trigger from that. So we use, you shouldn't be able to trigger like an authenticated event from the UI, because the UI is not driving that part of the application. And that just cleans up, like in the UI, when you trigger or you want to send an event, you only get like valid events. So the API, consuming the like API from that point is super clean. So we only have a single public auth event, which is that you can sign in. And all the auth events that the reducer is going to deal with is the public auth event and then the authentication events coming from the environment effect. The actual context we expose to UI components will only be tied with the public auth event. So only this event pops up when you use it in a component. But when we create a reducer, we use the full set of events. And what's really cool about this is that by just adding to like the feature events, the different environment effect events, I get an API in here. As you can see, I get all the events of the environment effect I'm consuming, and I can start putting them where they fit in. So in this case, when we're checking authentication, we actually do want to deal with the authenticated or the unauthenticated event to move the actual auth feature into its proper state for the UI to consume it. And when we're unauthenticated, we should only listen to sign in, which moves us into a signing in state where we again listen to authenticated, but also sign in error, because you remember when you actually sign in, you might get an error there. Yes. And so on. And what we do to actually like pass the actual events from the authentication environment effect into the auth feature is by just doing this. Use events, authentication events, and then we send them into the reducer. So this is really has been working out really well for us. It was the last piece of the puzzle. And I'm writing up more about this in the documentation, like the Git book. But for now, let's move over to our application. We need to get going with that again. But yeah, super happy about that piece. Let's see. Okay, here's our app. I haven't done anything more here yet. But let's add the latest version of React states. And we're just going to clean up our environment effects first to make them event-based as well. Now, I guess now you get a chance to see what these events mean. Yeah, this should be interesting. Okay, so first of all, we have auth. And you see we don't have the result anymore. What we have is events. So let's redefine how we do this. Let's remove the auth error type. And let's rather define some, and we're going to call this authentication. It's just because we do have an actual auth feature. So authentication is the environment effect. Auth is the feature that builds up the state for the UI to consume it. So we'll call it authentication event. Type. And the type of authentication events we have is, and we prefix, like environment effects, we prefix them or we namespace them so that you know, like you might be consuming multiple environment effects in a feature. So you get this really nice pointer to where is this event coming from. Yes, authentication. So we can be authenticated. And if we are authenticated, we actually do have a user there. User DTO. We might have unauthenticated, and we might actually have so this is very similar to Firebase because we're like Excalibur, because both of these are using Firebase. Sign in error, and then we have an error. Okay, so these are the events that our environment effect is going to push out. And then we'll add these events, authentication event, to our events. And then we're not going to do this, but we are just going to allow you to sign in. It's the same thing as the Excalibur one. And in our sandbox mode, we don't need this anymore. Let's see, authentication. sorry, I have to refactor a little bit. Create authentication. There's no result anymore. We don't need that. What we do need though is, let's see. Okay, so whoops. Let's see. We can make this async. That's perfectly okay. Oh, async sign in. Let's see. Sorry. Oh yeah, because we. Okay, let's just do random wait. Then. Oh, sorry, it's missing the events. Let's see. Events. There we go. Can this be async? Or does it give an error on that? No, that's okay. Okay, great. I was just thinking about the typing. Like void, it technically returns a promise, but it seems like the void return type accepts a promise void as well. Cool. So we'll randomly wait, and then we're going to say this dot events. I just wonder if we want to. No, I think we should do this. So typically you would listen to like Firebase for changes to authentication, but in sandbox mode you always have to actually sign in. There's no, it doesn't trigger an event. Well, it actually has to do that because we're waiting for the event. Okay, so let's authentication events is events where we have authentication event. Like we have to simulate the initial like check for authentication, but it's very straightforward. We just have to like give it some timeout, like this happens after 100 milliseconds, for example. And we say authentication events, and we're going to emit the unauthenticated one. So after 100 milliseconds, we're unauthenticated. And when we sign in, we're going to say authentication events, emit type that we are authenticated, and then we attach the user. So this is sandbox mode, so we are kind of controlling the flow here now. We're saying that every time you open the app, you're unauthenticated. Whenever you click sign in, you will become authenticated. And this is just to try to be able to try the sign in flow. And then adding these random waits just to give a more natural feel to loading, like, or it would be instant, like it would be completely synchronous. Okay, so that's like our authentication, and then let's now change our storage. So this is interesting because we're explicitly subscribing to things here. So we're going to do this quite differently. We are going to export type of storage event instead. And the first one is get family data. So let's call it, I'm calling it fetch instead, because get is, it kind of says give me back. Like I call this method give me back the family data, but that's not how it works here. We're just saying to the storage effect, go fetch the family data. Family data success. And what we'll have here is this. I guess we can just call it data. So we have that, and then we can have, and this is the thing, like what you're seeing now is that we have this generic storage read error, right? So we kind of have to, for every single call to this method, we currently have to like explicitly write out dealing with all the errors. But what's happening now is that we rather have explicit events. So we are trying to fetch family data. It's either a success or it is an error. So in our reducer, we don't have this like single error event. we actually explicitly deal with the error of each thing depending on our current state. Like, do we actually want to deal with it? Which is super powerful. So fetch family data error. In this case, we get an error. So first of all, let's just, oh yeah, I remember now. This is actually a factory where we pass in the family ID. How is this going to work now? Oh, this is interesting. Because we need to subscribe to we have to change this now. Okay, let's just do a simplification of this. Let's just remove this factory and let's just do it straightforward. But that does mean family ID. You have to pass in the family ID here. So let's just add our events from React states. Storage event. That was get family data. And then we have storage fetch groceries. Success. Let's call it family data. I like to be explicit. So this should be like grocery DTO. And yeah, this is a little bit boring, I guess. Again, we have an explicit error for when fetching groceries. So we can deal with these errors in different ways. We can have different kinds of error states in our feature, depending on which piece of data is erroring out, which is super awesome. Super awesome. Yes, and this should be fetch, and then we have tasks. Fetch tasks, and here we have task DTO tasks. I'm probably going to do a typo here somewhere. That's a classic. Storage fetch tasks, and this should be void. Cool. And then we have fetch week. Fetch week. What's interesting? Success week, and this gives week DTO. Yeah, what's interesting is that when you have these events, like you have a decoupled request and response. Like the request doesn't return anything, it's void, and then you just get some event. So you aren't able to tie these two together like you typically do. And this sounds like, oh, this is horrible. But the thing is that we have such good control of these events using our explicit states that this actually is a huge benefit. This wouldn't work without explicit states, but it works really well with them. But it does mean that if your application is able to like fetch multiple weeks at the same time, the event needs to also pass which one are you fetching, right? It's not, so you're passing in an ID here, so you have to make sure that you actually have an ID when the event arrives, so you can check that is this the actual week I was asking for. So that's how you kind of correlate requests with events. Anyways, but the power of that is that you might have certain parts of the application that actually does want to know about So one part of the application is fetching 1 week, and then you might have some other part of the application that shows like all the weeks, for example, and you want that part of the application to be to know about this other part of the application fetching weeks. It can just listen for that. So it just has different kind of logic for getting the weeks. And this is also a thing, like doing this, we have the possibility to include like an internal cache for the storage. So we can have like and we're going to talk about that, and we will have that, a cache. But that cache isn't, it's like a data cache. It isn't the source of truth for the features or for the UI. The UI consumes the features consumes the environment effects. So the environment effects just has a data cache, and then the feature actually creates the state that is going to be consumed by the UI. And that means that even though so multiple features might consume the same data cache and the same, in this case, the same week, but they will kind of put it into their own state. Yes. So they have like their own representation. And the reason is that you want to populate that state, like that data, with some additional state. Like you want to know like certain things around that data. Like data is just data. It's not like you have so many other things like filters, you have validation state, it just indicating that it's loading or being loaded or has been loaded. Like optimistic, is it optimistic? Like all this stuff. It's really nice separation to think about the environment effect as just having a data cache. It doesn't have to deal with, is it loading now? Is it expired and all this stuff? And is it valid and everything? It's just a pure data cache. And then it's up to the feature to determine when this data is exposed to the UI, what is its context, basically. That was very abstract, but you'll see what I mean. I'm just talking, aren't I? So let's do add, what was it? Add grocery. Add grocery success. And did it return anything? Yeah, grocery DTO. Add grocery error. And this is also interesting. Like we're adding a grocery here. And the thing is, we don't have an, I talked about having an ID to correlate a request with an event. In this case, we don't have an ID. We're just adding a grocery. So technically, if you were able to add multiple groceries at the same time, you wouldn't have a way to correlate the event coming later with your request to actually add the grocery. I guess you could like check the name. You could check the name, but the thing is, like, we don't allow that. We don't allow you to add multiple groceries anyway, so that's not an issue. And we could also allow you to add a grocery by creating our own ID. Yep, we could do that. And also, like, we can let add grocery actually return a string, which is the ID of the thing it's trying to add. Like, this is the optimistic nature of applications. You have to create the ID, or you have to deal with the ID, because you don't know the ID yet because you haven't saved it on the server. But in terms of Firebase, you actually create IDs on the client, and that's a good strategy. Like you have solutions where you can safely create IDs on the client and it won't crash. Or you would have to create a temporary ID on the client, and when you get the actual ID from the server, you have to like do some logic to flip them around. That's also a way to go, but it adds a level of complexity. But in this case, we're not going to return anything because we can only add one grocery at a time. Yeah, or can we? Like, this is interesting. So what happens when two people are working on this at the same time? We are going to subscribe to groceries internally, and we're going to emit an event whenever we add a grocery, even if it's coming from the user or if it's coming from... Yeah, this is interesting. This is actually very interesting. Because we have, like, are we going to use different events for that? What I mean to say is that if someone else adds a grocery and produces a snapshot on my end, does that trigger an add grocery success? It could do that, but it's basically a different event. It's like, this is more like I am adding a grocery, and is that a success? While the other one would be a grocery snapshot. Yeah, well, not snapshot, but like, well, add, I guess add grocery update or something. Yeah, it's like, what is the well, there is a difference. Like, this is related to me trying to add a grocery, while someone else adding a grocery and that hitting my computer that's just adding a grocery, because that's actually something that has been added without like me waiting for a request or anything like that. But we'll revisit that when we start adding the snapshot logic. And that's the thing, like, very often we want, this is like thinking dry, can we reuse this event? But I find it always to be better to not try to optimize your code, like reuse these events, because they do represent different things. As I said, one of them is related to me adding a grocery and that actually being successfully added to the database, while the other one is someone else adding a grocery and I'm being updated with that addition. Yep. Cool. So we'll talk more about like optimistic and all that stuff. Like, we're going to run through it, and we are just going to depend on Firebase saying that everything's okay, and then we're going to run through it again, and we're going to look at subscriptions so that we actually get updates from other users, and those will be events. And then we're going to dive into like having a cache, so that we kind of, first of all, when we add something, we just immediately add it. And also, if we were to go and fetch like tasks again for some reason, we actually return what we have in the cache first, and then asynchronously we go and ask Firebase to get the latest version, if that's even needed. Like, we do have these listeners, like we're going to set up these snapshot listeners, which means that we will kind of always keep that cache up to date. So we might not need that last step. Anyways, it's just really interesting because caching is super, super optimistic, and caching is super, super difficult to do. But having these events as the basis of everything, it becomes way more approachable. But yeah, I'm talking too much, I think. So let's see, delete grocery, delete grocery success, delete, and we don't really have, yeah, we can only, yeah, maybe this should actually have an ID. Like, one thing is adding a grocery. In terms of the UI, you can only add one at a time. But you can technically, I guess, remove multiple groceries. So let's add an ID there. Okay, that's void, and then we have fetch family. I have to go to a meeting, I think. Let's see, my calendar isn't that secret. Oh, no, okay, cool. Let's spend some more time. We'll spend another half an hour on this. Let's see how far we'll get. Delete grocery. What was the next one? Fetch family. There's a lot of events there. Fetch. And what's interesting here is that now we're putting all these events on the storage. But what we can do, like, we can split the storage into different sections. So what we can do is that we can say groceries, and then we have events for groceries and the API for groceries. And that's something we can do later. And then we have like tasks, and we can still, and then we'll just add like multiple subscriptions for our feature. To deal with this, and maybe we should just do this. Actually, because I think we have features. We'll do it later. One step at a time here. Fetch family, and what we get here is family DTO. Fetch. Oh, this is fetch. Oops, fetch family success. And then, oops. Then we'll fetch family error. And fetch family would now just be a void. And then we have set grocery shop count. Yeah, because there will be a ton of events here. So I guess that's like the indication of when should you split things up? It's when you have like too many events. So fetch family, this was set grocery shop count. Set grocery shop count success. This might look a little bit grocery. Might look a little bit crazy, but you'll see later what the power of this is. Especially when we move further into subscriptions and caching and stuff, you're really going to see what this does. Storage, archive, task success, archive task error. This definitely needs the ID. And also the error needs the ID. Did I added an ID on delete? Delete grocery. That also needs the ID. So if you have an error, you have to be able to set which grocery ID actually has an error. Let's see. Set week task. That was archive task. Set week task activity. Yes. So this is interesting. Set week task. Is that week task activity? Let's do this. Success. yeah, and in this case, we're actually returning the whole thing. This is going to be interesting because now we are saying, yeah, no matter. I think we can. Yeah, again, we need the ID of the week that we had a success on, because, and this is really interesting. Like, we need a lot of flexibility here. So, for example, toggling these week tasks, like you might, like you toggle them and then suddenly it saves, but you keep toggling them while it's saving, which means that when you get that back as a success, you don't want to override what you've done in the client. So in this case, we just want to really know about the error. So if there's an error on adding or toggling this stuff, then we have to decide what to do. We probably want to like allow the user to try to save it again, for example. Maybe we'll just ignore it. We'll just handle it under the hood. So if there's an error, we'll just try again. That's also a way to do it. But it's interesting that now we actually have the flexibility to do this. Because the only thing we need to do is like, we got an error on this week, like the tasks for this week on this user, and we can put that into a saving state again. And when it's put into a saving state again, it will just try again. And we could even have like a count there, like how many times has it tried. And then at a certain point, we can give an error to the user and saying like, there's something really bad happening with your week. And that's what I mean about putting the data into context. It's like the storage effect itself doesn't care about, is it saving now? Is it loading now? Is it doing this? How many times have you tried saving it? The storage doesn't care about that. The storage just has data. And then it's the feature that needs to deal with all of this complexity. Yeah, I guess that was a better example. Set week task activity error. We have the ID and the error. This now is a void. I guess we can remove the storage error thing. We don't need this. Cool. And then, yeah, so now we have the subscriptions and we can actually remove all of them. Cool. So this is our new storage. Like, we have a bunch of events there and we're going to just use them for now. And then we'll see how we can split these into namespaces to kind of clean up the events. So you would kind of do storage, groceries, add grocery error. So you kind of keep adding namespaces to it. So from the consumption of the reducer, you would still have like a long list of events that you can handle. Like if you actually subscribe to everything, you would actually have this long list, but you probably just subscribe to certain pieces. Anyways, we'll revisit that. So that will become more clear later. Okay, so now we have our storage. So let's take a look at the actual implementation now. So we're going to create the storage. Yeah, let's just quickly review what actually needs a family ID now, because more of them actually needs this. Well, all of them basically needs this now. It feels a little bit silly that you have to pass in the family ID every time, but you really do need it. Like, it's part of the ID. Like, it's the path in the database. Task ID. Okay, so we have family ID, week ID, task ID, user ID. That's cool. Yeah, so every single thing has a family ID now. So we'll have to remove family ID there. Okay. We have to change to events. And in this case, we're not going to fire off any events. And this is a really interesting thing. Like when we're writing tests now, like you want to test, for example, fetching groceries. But you also want to test, what if someone adds a grocery? And we can just, like, the really cool thing is that in the test, we don't have to like deal with anything around that. We can just trigger that event on the storage. Okay, you just got a grocery ad update. And that's it. Like it's, it's super simple to test this stuff. Okay, so we have fetch groceries. And now the way we, let's see. Oh, come on. Okay, so we have async fetch await. Sorry, there's a lot of refactor here now. We need to do this. Okay, so we're not going to return anything. We're going to point to this event emit. And here we're going to have fetch groceries success. And groceries would be, groceries. So again, we're not giving any errors here in the sandbox. Just 2 seconds. I'm just going to... I've learned that I shouldn't show my Slack. Just 2 seconds. About your wearing. Yeah, I'm just on my Slack. I'm just checking because I have a date with a colleague to build something epic today. Doing the stream be on at 10. Okay, by you. Cool. Let's continue. Let me flip over. Yeah, like it's so, I'm just insanely proud of the way we are building the new stuff at Code Sandbox now, and what we're building is going to blow people's minds. It's like we're building the most powerful what's it called? Context provider in the history of React. Like in terms of, like, you have context providers that allows you to change the theme of the page, for example. You have a context providers that gives you access to some data. So what I mean is that the thing that is being exposed from this context provider is the most, like, it's the most, like, if you were to consume that context provider, you would feel so insanely powerful. So I'm super excited when we're going to show this stuff off. Yeah, anyways. So we have fetch week. So this would be a family ID. So this would also be async. We'll do an await, and then we'll do an emit of this as well. Emit here, oops, type here, it would be storage week, fetch week success, and the week would be week's ID. I guess we can do this. Okay, let's just get through this. Fetch tasks, async. Yeah, and we're soon going to see how we actually consume this stuff. It's going to be interesting. Await, and again, this events emit. This was task success. Oh my, what would we do without VS Code here? There we have the tasks and also TypeScript. Like it's interesting. Like most applications are simple enough not to use TypeScript, but like when you work at the complexity level of what Code Sandbox is, you really have to, like, we wouldn't survive without TypeScript. No way. No way. Okay, so this event emit, this would be the add grocery success thing, and it needs, okay, it just needs the grocery, new grocery. Delete grocery, family ID. We'll await it a little bit, and then let's see, we'll do this. Instead, this events emit delete grocery success, and we actually bring the ID of the thing we're deleting. It's already there, nice. And now it's fetch family. Family, well, we don't ever use that, so let's just do this. Cool. And we do this, and we do this, and then we do this. This event, well, this event emit type family, fetch family success, and we have the family there. Then we have fetch family data, which we also use async for. Weak ID? Oh yeah, we added that thing where we can just fetch everything in one go. Yeah, this might actually change now that we are event-based. Interesting. Let's revisit that as well. Data. Oh, family data. Cool. And then we have async archive task. Sorry if this is a little bit boring, but I'm moving as fast as I can here. Archive task success, and I guess it needed the ID. Async. It's really nice. Like, it cleans up the API a ton as well. Like, as I mentioned in the previous stream, the result is a powerful thing, but it really is just a band-aid on the problem with promises. Well, now we're fundamentally changing our approach. What was this? Grocery shop count success. And we have the... Do we actually change the shop count here? Shop count is shop count. We should actually change it because it's a success, and then we'll existing grocery like that. I guess like the right way to do this, like we're mutating the existing grocery now. We should really change it. Yeah, this isn't the right way to change it. We need to... I do see, like, at Code Sandbox, we have a lot of... we have a few, like, nested updates to... And since we're embracing React, we have to deal with, like, references. So we have to kind of change the references, like doing spreading and ensure that we... If we have a nested change, it has to like propagate or bubble up. So like the thing is that existing groceries should actually be a new object now because we're changing the shop count, and there's no like efficient way of doing this, I guess. Well, I guess we can do groceries equals groceries map. Yeah, we can do this. To properly change this, we can check if the grocery ID equals the ID. If it does, we're actually going to return a new one, or we just return a grocery. And then we'll have to allow oh, it is. Oh yeah, it's because I didn't. So we'll have the grocery, but we'll update the shop count. Oh, I'm still having. And then we have to go and grab it. This is annoying. Yeah. First we'll update it, and then we'll go find it. Grocery. Like this is just code for the sandbox, so it's not that big of a deal. But let's go find the grocery. Maybe I could have changed the data structure because it's an array now. I could have changed that. Maybe we should do that. Anyways, we can do that later. Okay, so async. Blah blah blah. Yeah, here we have the same thing. We don't need these things. We're mutating here, but we have to change this. Yeah, we don't have like add task. Oh yeah, we're dealing with the dashboard now. Okay, so we have to do the same here. We have to actually mutate weeks. So weeks equals weeks. Let's make that let as well. Let weeks week ID, and in this case I kind of have to say that weeks, here you see the nested stuff, which is sometimes a bit horrible. Oh, weeks. Why do we have tasks in between there? Oh, because it has an ID. Okay. Tasks. Weeks, week ID, tasks. This is horrible. Yeah, and then we don't know if it's actually there, right? Oh. Oh, wait, tasks, is that? No, that's a map. I'm confused. Why is this complaining? Oh, sorry. No. Oh, sorry. Of course. There we go. And then we have the task ID, and that is, yeah, now we have the users. So we have to do this task ID. Like, this is crazy stuff. And then we have the actual user ID. Now you start to see why you want Immer. Yes, and then this is the array. Week task activity, that is the full array. Okay, so now we properly updated it. So this events emit type week task activity success, and I guess this is the week ID. Yeah, we should have task ID. Yeah, let's do week ID, task ID, and user ID. So we'll change the week ID, task ID, user ID, so that we have a reference to what's actually being updated. Cool. And we don't need this. Okay, nice. So we have made our storage effect also event-based. And as I said, we'll see later like the true power of this, but you kind of get a hint to it already. So what we need to do now, we have to change this to authentication. I guess our goal now is to, yeah, let me see if I got a response on the, yep, okay, at 10 I have to go. So let's wrap this up. Authentication. Okay, so we have the auth feature. So what you're going to see now is how we actually clean this stuff up. We don't need this stuff. Let's just go through it. The first thing we want to do, oh yeah, we're using the old exec and stuff here as well. So the first thing we want to do is we want to use events, and we want to use the authentication events to send them into the reducer. Now what we also want to do is we want to remove all this stuff. We're just going to call it sign in, and we don't need any of these anymore. So we're removing a ton of events from the feature itself because it's driven by the environment effect. Well, not driven by the environment effect, but the events are coming from the environment effect. So in this case, we have like a public auth event, which we actually expose to the UI. And then the actual auth event is a mix of public auth event and the authentication event. And this is what we're actually dealing with in the reducer. And what we can do here, we can change this a little bit now, because we can say, okay, we are signing in. We always start in signing in. So let's fix that immediately. The initial state is signing in. And then we'll move into a signed in state or a signed out state. Oh yeah, let's remove all of these. So this would be create context, which is coming from React states. We have create hook, which is also coming from, oh, come on. Which is also coming from React states. And also create reducer is coming from React states. So we'll start with signing in. And remember now we're subscribing to the authentication environment effect, which means that here we actually get these events now. So when we're signing in and we're getting authenticated, we'll move into auth context. We'll move into a signed in state with the user. If our authentication effect gives us unauthenticated, or sorry, now we're actually signing, if it gives us unauthenticated, we'll move into a signed out state. Oh, sorry. This shouldn't be signing in. Sorry, my bad. We need to differentiate actually signing in, like did you click to sign in? This is more like verifying authentication. This is what actually happens in the beginning. We're just waiting for the events. Are you signed in or are you not signed in? When you're actually signing in, that means you like click the button. Then we're waiting for the authenticated event, or you might actually get the sign in error event. And that, again, we need an auth context here. This is, yeah, it's kind of annoying that TypeScript doesn't have. I guess we want to just go to, array here. Cool. Yes, verifying authentication, that's the first state we're doing. And then signing in, and then we have signed in. Like, what can happen here now is that we might get an unauthenticated event when we're signed in. Like, maybe you click the logout button, maybe you delete a cookie, or maybe you log out of Google in some other service, and then you're signed out here. Like, it can happen. And then we have signed out, where we actually allow you to sign in. That's where we're waiting for the UI, and we are moving into a signing in state, where we'll wait for the authenticated or the sign-in error. So this shows you how we were able to remove a ton of events for this feature and rather use the events coming directly from the environment effect. Let's see. So let's just change this. We are actually listening to the events now. And use enter, use enter effect. How we split up. Yeah, so we have auth. When we are entering signing in, we want to point to authentication and run sign in. That's all. So we don't need any of this stuff either. You see? Our feature just became way simpler. And now other features are also able to use these same events to deal with whatever they want. Like, for example, when you're unauthenticated, maybe there are certain features that want to clean something up or whatever, and they could do that. Okay, we'll stop there, and then we'll continue this tomorrow. I guess we'll look at the dashboard feature. We'll refactor this as well, and then we're back up and running with our page, and we can continue to implement the sandbox version of this. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Cool. That's it for now. We'll talk tomorrow, and have a good day.